Welcome to Truth Speakers, a Burning Lights Ministries podcast. I am Katie Bowers, full-time mom and full-time evangelist. I'm here to encourage you to be and train the next generation of truth speakers. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share, and follow us on all of our social media platforms.
You want to know what's stupid? I spray perfume before every single time that I record for you guys. How stupid is that? Like, you guys could smell me or something. But I just want everybody to know that I smell amazing today. Anyway, also I present to you my clean laundry in the car today. As you can see, we've been busy on the road. Our schedule has been insane lately. So we're just trying to keep up and keep it real. Have you guys ever felt like somebody was trying to figure you out? Or maybe you've been the person just trying to figure somebody out, and it's just like there's no label for them. I think that's a beautiful place to be. I feel like everywhere I go, I'm like, these people are not like me, but who I am, I want to worship with everybody. I want to get involved if Jesus is involved, for sure. But you know how many times I've walked into a place and I see people look at me from head to toe, trying to figure me out by the way I dress. So I kind of joke about this everywhere I go, but it's kind of the truth that the charismatic people don't like me because I wear a skirt. But also the apostolic people don't like me because I cut my hair. And so I had to just kind of settle in my mind early on. People are always going to find something that they don't like about me. So who am I going to please? Am I going to please myself? Because honestly, if it's up to me, I will always come up short. I'm my worst critic. Will I please people? Because here again, I'm never going to be enough for anybody else. Everybody's going to have some type of bone to pick with me. Or am I going to please the Lord? And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've always been a people pleaser, and I've really had to push through that in my life because my nature is naturally just agreeable. I don't like disagreement. I don't like, confrontation. I avoid it basically at all costs. Not all costs, but I really tried to avoid confrontation. My husband gets so mad at me because I am the worst person to try to have an argument with, because I'm like, I'm so sorry. In the beginning of it, I'm like, I don't want to fight. But the truth is, Jesus was not always agreeable, but he had this perfect balance of knowing when to stand up and speak truth. And, if that meant be disagreeable, he called the Pharisees hypocrites and vipers. He was confrontational when he needed it. He turned over tables when he needed it. But he also was able to find a perfect balance of, he wasn't always fighting with somebody. He wasn't always, this is because it's relevant now, but he wasn't always in a Facebook fight with somebody. He wasn't always at odds with somebody. But he was able to find this just perfect balance of agreeable yet disagreeable. And I feel like this is just applicable to so many different aspects of life. What I want to talk about today is just something that's been on my spirit is, I think people look at me and they're like, I'm not so sure what I think about her. Because like I said, I look kind of both ways, like charismatic or holiness. Because the truth is, I think I'm a little bit of both. And growing up, I never would have ever thought in a million years that I would be like working with what I would call charismatic churches. I always thought I would only work with like holiness churches and stuff. But I found that my definition of charismatic was all wrong. That, there is a group of people out there that, they really have turned the grace of God into lasciviousness. They've decided, greasy grace is what I heard it called my whole life. And that really is a thing. I mean, that's not untrue. But what I did find is I thought that just because people didn't look like me or have my specific doctrine, that just meant they were abusing the grace of God, when that's really not the truth. Not everybody's going to hold the same standard as me. And I found that we can have some real moves of the Spirit with some people that I would call charismatic. But I've lumped those people with the greasy grace people when that is not the truth. Along with, I thought everybody that looked holiness, lived to a standard. But early on, I learned that was not the truth. You can look a certain way and believe something totally different. You can say that you believe something, but the proof is in the pudding. Your life, the fruits of your life really reveal who you really are and what you truly believe. Because you can tell me you believe in Jesus all day long, and you can tell me you love Jesus all day long, but if you don't keep his commandments, you don't love him. Because Jesus literally told us, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And so I think that my goal of this podcast is simply to try to get you to be a little bit more open-minded. That there are so many stigmas, there are so many misconceptions, because we as human beings have this terrible tendency of trying to shove people in a box of this style or this genre or this denomination. I mean, the church world did that early on with denominations. If I'm totally honest with you, I'm really against denominations. I don't think that that's God's way. I think we should, to the best of our abilities, live like the book of Acts church. That original intent of God was not, place everybody, go through schooling, and if that's what you believe, that's totally fine. I'm fine with that. But I think we have, with that mindset, tried to just encapsulate people in this specific mindset or genre or style, when I found that that's really not the case whenever you really and truly have a relationship with God. Because, I've tried to put myself in a box. I've tried to be that, holiness, strict holiness, and that's still a part of who I am. But when I went to breaking stuff down, I couldn't find some of my beliefs in the Bible. And that bothered me, because that's not Jesus. I was putting myself in bondage to things that God had not convicted me about. I was just simply placing myself in this box of, well, I'm just this group of people. Whenever I shouldn't identify with a group of people, I should be identifying with Jesus. I look like Jesus. I act like Jesus. I talk like Jesus. I believe like Jesus. My goal is not to look like a denomination or to look like a person or a leader. My goal is to look like Jesus. And I truly believe that is the definition of holiness. Whenever I, look at my life and look at myself, and I place Jesus beside me in my mind, and I see what parts of me do not look like him. And whenever I do everything in my power to change everything in me that doesn't look like him, that is someone striving for holiness. Not, what does my denomination believe? What does my, and I believe in the fivefold ministry. I believe in leaders. I believe in all those things. But when I strive to truly look like Jesus and believe like Jesus, that is whenever we can really reach our fullest potential. Because, growing up, I believe everybody that was charismatic was loose living and abuse the grace of God, whenever I found that that just wasn't the truth. And then when I was very young, I decided that everybody who looked a certain way, who wore a skirt or had long hair, that they were just this holiness woman of God or man of God, whenever that wasn't the case either. That the way that I look should not decide how close I think I am to God. And I think this can be applied to a lot of different aspects of life. Like, I was recently listening to this, really it was a YouTube, I was watching it on YouTube, I think the host was like Ellen Fisher. I don't know anything about her. I just recently found her, but she had Abby Halberstadt on there. I really love Abby Halberstadt. She has 10 kids. She's a Bible-believing Christian. I don't agree with everything, but I really love listening to her, and I've read her books. I've liked it. I love them. And then she also had this other woman on there. I can't remember her name. Maybe it was something like maybe Ginger. I don't know. You have to look it up. But she is kind of a voice for the gentle parenting, and Abby Halberstadt is definitely not. She stands against gentle parenting. And so I was just listening to this debate because that's what it was. It was a debate kind of communicating both sides and different belief systems. And I found that there was so much more that they agreed on than they didn't agree on. And that, the host was like, asked Abby, like, how much would you identify with someone who would call themselves an authoritarian parent? So like someone that's like, you tell your kid jump and they say how high, and if they don't do that, you beat them, in the tail till they're black and blue kind of thing, And she was like, I wouldn't identify with that at all. I don't see that in the Bible. When God leads his children, he uses his voice, and he uses he does have to use correction and punishment at times. But what I see is God is not wanting us to have this relationship with him based on, if I don't do something right, God's going to strike me dead, because that is not a real relationship. A real relationship is someone that you can communicate with, someone that you can reason with. The Bible taught us that Moses reasoned with God, that was a relationship that we should strive for, a relationship that as the disciples, they walked with Jesus, and as Moses, they reasoned with God, and they walk in power, but they also walk in mercy. And then the host asked this other woman, the gentle parenting expert, and she asked, how well could you identify with passive parenting? And that's just like parents who are passive, like they don't approach things, they don't approach problems head on, they just basically ignore it, and they disregard all of their child's actions. Whenever, like, authoritarian and then passive, they're like total polar opposites, and neither one of those women identified with either one of those labels, because we have tried to put them in boxes. I know I have honestly come against gentle parenting a lot, and then whenever I heard her perspective, I was like, wait a minute, there is a radical belief of gentle parenting that I believe is more like passive parenting, where it's like you don't care that whenever your kids get older that they are going to have to follow the laws of the land, that they're going to end up in prison if they don't learn how to follow rules. But there's also, like, I also don't agree with authoritarian parenting, that I want to teach my kids how to make decisions for themselves, how to make educated, Bible-based decisions for themselves, and not having me as their like ruler or dictator all of their life. I as their parent recognize that they're so young. They're 4, 3, and 1 right now, and I know that they can't make educated Bible-based decisions right now, but I am even now teaching them how to reason, taking moments to teach during that, because I want to raise, level-headed, reasoning adults that don't break the laws, right? I don't want them to end up in prison, but I also want them to know that truth is truth, and that we believe that truth is solid no matter where you stand. And so if my child lies to me, there will be a consequence. And so I've come against this gentle parenting thing, believing that all gentle parents were passive parents, whenever I found that I was really wrong about that. And I honestly got a little bit convicted, because I was like, I am doing the same thing to these people as I get irritated at people doing to me, which is trying to label me or trying to fit me in a genre or a style. And what I found is the Lord loves a just balance. He is the perfect balance. Jesus is the perfect balance of everything. I mean, just look at his character. We see that he, okay, let's say it like this. David found the mercy of God whenever he went and ate the shewbread, which he wasn't allowed to do. It was against the law. He found mercy in the law when he ate that shewbread, because he found that there is mercy in the law, that at that point Jesus had not been born yet, but Jesus came as not just a revelation of mercy, but he came as the revelation of the fulfillment of the law, which is, we find that in the Ark of the Covenant, that was part of the Levitical priesthood. But it also involved a mercy seat. The mercy will always have a seat in the law of God. And so there is a balance that we can find. And I think we can get so trapped into, what are the rules that I have in my Christianity. And please hear me out, that truth is always truth no matter what. I'm not telling you can go out and kill just because, just because there's mercy in the law. No, that would be turning the grace of God into lasciviousness. Lasciviousness means lust without restraint. That doesn't mean that we can't have restraint. We can't. That's part of the fruits of the Spirit. Temperance, self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, but gentleness also is too. And so there we find the fruits of the Spirit is, there's a balance. We can find temperance. We can find gentleness. We can find a balance of law and mercy. And the only way that we can find that is not just reading our Bible. We can see that. But the way we get to that is having a relationship with Jesus and experiencing and fellowshipping with the Spirit of the Word and the Spirit of mercy, which is Jesus. And so I don't want you to feel so trapped in your mind that I have to be this because I'm in this denomination, or I have to be that because I'm in this fellowship. Or I urge you, follow the Spirit of law and mercy. Follow Jesus himself, because he's the only way that you are truly going to be able to walk in the fullest potential that God has for you. Because there's going to come a time whenever you're going to have to make a decision for yourself. We won't always have a man to look to. Don't base your belief on what a man says. The Bible, I believe in seeking wise counsel. I believe in the elder teaching the younger. You all know this about me. But I also do know the scripture says in a multitude of counselors, there's safety. Multitude, not just one, not just two, but find several counselors. And in that multitude of counselors, there is safety in that. And so I think that we have been so far removed from, what does Jesus, I know it's become a cliche, like everybody had those bracelets, like WWJD, what would Jesus do? And we really turned it into a cliche, but the truth is we should have that in our minds. No matter where we are, that should be in the back of our mind. Well, what would Jesus do in this? Not what would my denominational leader be? Not, what would so and so do that's my role model, which is fine. It's fine to have role models, but my role model should not dictate what I do in my life. I am following the Lamb. Who are the sons of God? Those that are led of the Spirit. That's what the Bible said. Not those who are led by a man or led by a doctrine. People have turned the doctrine of Jesus into Jesus being a doctrine, when that is not the truth. Jesus is not a doctrine. I'm not living by a certain black and white cookie cutter set of rules, because we find that in David's life, that he found mercy in the law. Jesus found mercy in the law. That woman that they brought to him who was caught in the act of adultery, you know what the law said? The law said, stone her to death, kill her right here, right now. But somehow Jesus looked at her and I don't even know what he wrote in the sand, because he told them, he said, he who's without sin, let him cast the first stone. Jesus was the only one in that group of people that had that opportunity to cast a stone, but he chose not to. He was the only one without sin. That's why everybody left but him. He was still standing there because he was without sin. But in that moment, he didn't choose to fulfill that part of the law. He chose to find where mercy sat in that moment. And so I think it's so beautiful that we are able to find mercy in the law, but we are able to live to a standard that we don't just go out and live however we want, but we say, Lord, what do you have to say about this? That, I believe, is just the beauty of it. You know, he calls us the bride of Christ, and one of the very last scriptures of the whole Bible said, the Spirit and the bride say come, that it's two voices in perfect unity. And I don't believe that we can truly find that place until we let law and mercy come in holy matrimony in our lives. When we find that balance, you know, it seems like every couple has like opposite personalities, or at least like with me and Elijah, I feel like we kind of go back and forth with this, but like one of us, I guess I've heard this analogy. I think my mother-in-law might have been the one that started this. I don't really know for sure, but she said in a relationship, somebody has to be the rock and somebody has to be the balloon. You know, that there's this balloon character, you know, that is just like so excited. They're so open-minded. They want to just like blow with every wind of excitement. And, you know, the Bible does talk about people blown about by every wind of doctrine. So there is a bad part of that. But there's also, you know, somebody that's a rock, that's solid, that's going to keep that balloon stable and in its place, you know, and I see that in our marriage, that there's times when Elijah's like, yeah, let's go, let's just run like the wind, you know, and do this. And I find myself being like the voice of family, like, oh, that's going to be a little too hard on the kids. Let's slow it down a little bit. Let's do this. But then there's also times that I'm like, oh, let's do this. Oh my gosh, that would be so amazing. And he's like, I just don't think financially that's going to be the best idea. You know, let's take it slow. And so I find that for us, we kind of go back and forth, right? But there is a balance, that there has to be, you know, for lack of a better word, a solidity, but there also has to be this part of us that is, you know, moldable, that's shapeable. And we see that in a relationship with God, that he told us that the letter killeth, but the Spirit bringeth life. And so we see that it takes a balance of both letter or word or written law and spirit, that Jesus found the spirit of that. I like, okay, let me just give you an example. In the law, part of the law was, if a child is disobedient or rebellious, you kill him. I just want to know how many parents fulfilled that, obeyed that part of the law, because, or there had to be parents saying, my kid is just being a kid. You know, they're having a bad day. They're trying to spread their wings and trying to figure out life. And right now, it looks like rebellion. Right now, it is definitely disrespect. But because they had a love for their child, were able to find mercy in that law, that they didn't just go kill their kids whenever they were disrespectful every 5 seconds, right? Or else there would be no children. Life would have stopped. Humanity would have ended, because every single one of us has had a bad moment when we're kids, when we're adults. Every single person in the world has rebellious moments. And so I guarantee you, they found mercy in the law that day, but yet they were still fulfilling those foundational parts of the law. And so I urge you, don't put yourself in this captivity of, this is just so easy, black and white, whenever it really takes a relationship with Jesus to be able to find the balance of who we are supposed to be in God, because that's who Jesus is. If I'm looking at Jesus, I'm reading his word, I'm looking at the character of God, I'm experiencing his love, but I'm also experiencing his chastisement. I find that there is a balance of rules and regulations and laws, but there also is a balance of, I find mercy and I find a comfort, and I find that rest part of it, that I know that God isn't just going to strike me dead when I make a mistake, because I've experienced his mercy. But I do understand that there are consequences when I make bad decisions, and that's okay. That honestly keeps me on track, because if it was all mercy all the time, we'd end up dead in a ditch somewhere, But if it was all rules all the time, none of us would have any spirit, none of us would have any hope. But there is a place in God that we find hope and peace and security. I mean, I had something happen to me. Honestly, it was just last night. I was praying about our living situation that I have talked to you all about a lot. And I was just praying, Lord, my kids, and this is honestly transparent for me, but my kids, they need a place that's stable. They need a place that's, we can call home, somewhere they can come home for the holidays, a place that's stable. And I just kept saying stable. And I thought, Lord, I said, Lord, that kids thrive on stability and that stable environment. And I really felt like God spoke to me and he said, who told you that? And I was like automatically defensive, like, well, that's it's been proven, it's proven facts. And I realized, who did those studies? Who said this? And it's these like child psychologists, and I'm sure they're very educated. They've got lots of experience and childhood experts. But then I started looking at the Bible and I realized that my kids do not need a stable environment. They need a stable mom, because that's what the Word of God teaches me. Be ye, stable, be unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, stand steadfast in the faith. All of these things are talking about us as human beings, because we're not always going to be able to control life. We're not going to be able to control our child's environment. I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, well, I just didn't even know what to do in this situation, because there was a transgender person working in this public, place. And I knew my young children were going to have questions. They were going to be confused about it. And they were like, I just didn't make the decision. Like, I was standing there in the store thinking, should I leave or should I continue shopping? And, I think she ended up making the right decision of just staying and using it as a teaching moment, because I've realized, like, I've already had to have the talk with my 3-year-old and 4-year-old about men marrying men are not of God, that boys and girls get married, and I've already had to have this conversation of, homosexuality with my kids, and that the truth of the gospel and the truth of Jesus is, this one man, one woman, and holy matrimony. I've already had to talk with them about how, you get married and then you have kids, because there's so many that are having children and buying a home and doing all these things before marriage. And so I'm already having to approach these things, that we can't be that passive parent, right? We can't, not be intentional about it. But we're not always going to be able to control our environment. I can't tell you, our environment is constantly changing. We go from state to state to state. We're in multiple states pretty much every week of our life. If you go on our Facebook page, I just posted where we're going to be in June, and there was like 5 or 6 different columns of different states that we're going to be in. And what I see is we aren't able to control the environment. We can't control it. Everybody else does. And we can decide that, the childhood experts say their environment has to be stable, but what does God have to say about that? Because the Lord knows, practically speaking, He knows the whole truth and reality of we are not able to give our children a perfect environment at all times. There will be times when it seems like it's the perfect scenario, but not every time is it going to be a perfect environment. And so there we find that all of life is not this black and white cookie cutter, rule book. We're not always going to find perfect answers in the scripture for what we need. And that's where a relationship with Jesus comes in. So I just want to encourage you, don't get stuck in a box, but also don't judge people based on what you believe about them. Because the real people of God are finding a balance. They're not charismatic. They're not holy, or, strict holiness. They're not gentle parents. They're not authoritarian parents. They're not this denomination. They're not that denomination. We are simply following the voice of all creation. And we are, to the best of our abilities, working out our own salvation with fear and trembling. Don't be hard, but don't be too loose. The way we find that is a relationship with Jesus. Thank you so much for listening today. I do want to tell you before we get off here, we are a full-time evangelistic ministry. Me and my husband Elijah are raising all 3 of our kids on the road. We do have needs right now, and we live off of love offerings. And so if you have been touched by this video or anything on our channel, or if you just feel a pricking on your spirit to try to support our ministry, hop on over to BurningLightsMinistries.com. There you can find our itinerary, everywhere we're going soon. We have some big meetings coming up this summer that I want you to be a part of. Also, you can find different giving options. We have CASHAPP, PayPal, Venmo. We use a service called Give Butter. They're able just to go on directly onto our website and give either a one-time offering or become a sponsor. So we will be starting homeschooling next month with our oldest daughter, and so things are getting busy for us. The expenses, we're buying homeschool material. The Lord has been helping us with that, but that's just some of the needs that we have right now. Homeschool material, gas is at it's high right now. We pay groceries just like everybody else, and it's high right now. We're buying diapers, we're buying baby wipes, we're buying baby needs. And so just think about it practically. If you've been touched by this, just, consider giving an offering. And we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll pray for you if you pray for me. Goodbye.